Good morning, guys. Welcome to today's discussion. And today we are going to look at how to use algebra to solve for our aggregate demand and some few other questions. This is in relation to lecture 11. Sorry, in relation to lecture 10. Yeah. All right. So I'm starting with the first question. Okay. So supposing you are given this information, so I'm looking at task 21. Supposing you've been given this information, that is first your monetary policy curve. Let's say you've been given your monetary policy curve. Monetary policy curve, where is it? Yeah, great. So let's say you've been given your monetary policy curve as R is equals to 1.5 plus 0.75 P, and your IS curve as Y is equals to 13 minus R. 13 minus R. Great. Calculate an expression for aggregate demand. So first you'll be asked to calculate for AD, aggregate demand. If you recall from what we did yesterday, we said aggregate demand looks at the relationship between what your output and inflation. In other way, that is your price. So when I look at these two equations, let's call this equation 1. Let's call this equation 2. Right? Because I have R in equation 2, I can replace equation 1 in equation 2. So I can say Y is equals to 13 minus, in place of R, I'm going to write 1.5 plus 0.75 P, right? 0.75 P. So let's expand. That is, I'm going to have Y is equals to 13 minus 1.5 minus 0.75 P. And that gives me 13 minus 1.5 is 11.5. So Y is equals to 11.5 minus 0.75 P. Right? So clearly you can see that this is the constant term, right? This is the component 1 part of the aggregate demand curve, and this is the second component, right? So clearly this is a constant part, and we are assuming this is constant, and we are looking at what happens to Y when there's a change in P, right? So it means this examines the relationship between what price and output, and this is the same as the aggregate demand curve, right? That demand is the same as aggregate demand equation, right? Not curve, sorry. Now the second question is calculate the real interest rate and aggregate output when the inflation is 2%, 13%, and 14%, right? So calculate. Now we've gotten to know that Y is equals to, let me write it here, 11.5 minus 0.75 P is okay. Now we've been asked to calculate for what real interest rate and aggregate output when the inflation rate is 2%. So I'm going to write it here. This is my inflation. When inflation is 2%, when inflation is 3%, and when inflation is 4%, right? So first I'm looking for R and also output. Now, when you look at the equation one, we have R equals to 1.5 plus 0.75p. So the P in this case represents the inflation, right? So in the case when R is equals to, when P is equals to 2, that means R will be equals to 1.5 plus 0.75 into brackets 2, right? So that's going to give me 1.5 plus 0.75 into brackets 2, and that gives me 3. That means I'm going to have 3. Is it okay? I'm going to have 3% here. And in the case when R is equal to 3, this one changes to 3. So that is going to give me 3.75%. In the case when it is equals to 4, the case when it is equals to 4, I'm going to have 4.5. It's going to give you 4.5%, right? Great. Now the next one is to look for our aggregate output. This is y. So in the case of y2, we derive the y function as what? We derive our y function as y is equals to 11.5 minus 0.75p. So when inflation is 2%, I'm going to have 11.5 minus 0.75p. That inflation is 2%, and that gives me 10. And when I have it as 3%, and that will give me 9.25. And when it's equals to 4%, that will give me 8.5. Great. 8.5. So look at something. So when you look at the table that I have here, I have inflation, I have my real interest rate, and I have my output. Is okay. So the next question is draw. So then the next question is draw the graphs of the IS monetary policy. Oh, sorry. Draw the graph of the IS, the monetary policy, and aggregate demand curve. Great. All right. Okay. So let's start. Now look at something. I have three columns. That is, so if I'm looking at the relationship between the first column, which is this and this, then that is going to give me what? The monetary policy curve. Because the monetary policy curve examines the relationship between what? Real interest rate and inflation. Okay. Now when I look at the relationship between the first column again and the third column, that will give me what? Aggregate demand curve, because that is also examining the relationship between inflation or prices and output. That gives you what? The aggregate demand curve. And when I look at the relationship between the second column and that of the third column, that is relationship between real interest rate and then output, that also gives me what? The IS curve, because it is only the IS curve that establishes the relationship between what? Output and real interest rate. Great. So I'm going to start with the monetary policy. Going to start with the monetary policy. So let's say this is my curve. My real interest rate on the vertical side, and then my inflation on this part. So when inflation is 2%, what is my real interest rate? It was 3%. So they meet here. Now when inflation is 3%, what is my real interest rate? It was 3.75. So they meet here. Right? Now when inflation is 4% here, my real interest rate was 4.5. It is also here. So that is also here. So when I draw a line to pass through these points, that gives me my monetary policy curve. That gives me my monetary policy curve. Great. Now the next one that we're supposed to also look for is the IS curve. So this is the monetary policy curve. Now I'm going to look for the IS curve. Okay, so with the ISKF2, I'm looking at the relationship between what real interest rates and outputs. So when my real interest, I'll make this one as my R, this one as Y. So when real interest rate is 3%, let's say 3% here, what is going to be my output? Output will be 10. Let's say 10 will be here. So I'm going to be here. Now, when my real interest rose to 3.75, that is here, what happens to my output? It reduced to 9.25. So let's say I'll be around this area. And when my real interest rate also increased further to 4.5, my output also fell to 8.5. So I'll be somewhere here. So when I draw the curve, this is also called what IS curve. And it is depicting the negative relationship between what output and the real interest rate. That is when real interest rate increases. So when the real interest rate was what 5%, 4.5, this was our output. When it decreased to 3.8, this is what our output increased. And when it decreased further to 3, this one also increased like this, right? Great. So that's our IS curve. Now the next one that we're going to look at is what aggregate demand curve. And the aggregate demand curve also looks at the relationship between prices and outputs. Look at the relationship between prices or inflation and output, right? Okay, great. So this is my Y, this is my inflation. Okay, so when inflation is 2%, output is what? 10. So we are going to be somewhere here, 2% and 10. Now when inflation rose to 3%, output fell towards 9.25%. 3 and the 9.25% will be somewhere here. And when inflation rose further to 4.4%, output also fell again to 8.5. That is also going to be somewhere here, right? So when I draw my line to pass through these points, that also becomes what my aggregate demand curve. It is aggregate demand curve because it is what looking at the relationship between inflation and outputs. Is okay? So that is all. So in this question, we were given our monetary policy curve and dice curve, and we were asked to derive aggregate demand curve from that, which I did. And after that, we were given real interest rates. We were asked to find the real interest rate and output given an inflation, which the inflation was given as this one, and we did that. And the next question was to use the information that we have to graph the ISF, IS, MP, and AD, which we've done. So let's move to the next question. Great. So the next question, which is task 23. So suppose an economy is described as follows. Suppose an economy is described as follows. You have autonomous consumption in the equilibrium is equals to $3.25. We have autonomous I investment also equals to $1.3, and we have government expenditure autonomous also equals to 3. We have net exports autonomous parts is equals to -1. We have F bar, that is the financial friction, which is equals to $1, right? And we have MPC, that is marginal propensity to consume, which is also equals to 0.75. And we have our D, which is equals to 0.3. And we have our X, which is equals to 0.1. We have lambda, which is equals to 1, and we have our R bar, which is equals to 1. So these are the information that we're given. And don't forget that the bars that we have on each of these components indicates that these are the equilibrium quantity. So that is when the economy is in equilibrium. This is the autonomous consumption, which is different from the A, right? So the first question is derive an expression for the monetary policy. So first, derive an expression for monetary policy. So what is the formula for finding monetary policy? Monetary policy formula is what R is equals to autonomous R plus lambda inflation. So this lambda is measuring the sensitivity of what? Inflation. That is when the inflation increases by 1 unit, it will lead to what? Lambda change in our real interest rate. So it's just looking at the sensitivity of inflation to that of real interest rate. Now, when you look at the question, what was the autonomous R? It was 1. So I can say my R is equals to 1 plus what was my lambda? Lambda was also 1. So that means plus this inflation. So this becomes my monetary policy. Okay, monetary policy curve. Now the next one is to derive the AD curve. Now, if you recall from lecture 7, we said our IS curve, when we were writing our IS curve, the formula was what the IS curve formula was y is equals to the autonomous part of consumption plus the autonomous part of investment plus government expenditure plus net exports of A, right? Minus we did mention of DF, right? Minus MPC of tax, right? Minus MPC multiplied by tax all over 1 minus MPC minus D plus X into bracket 1 minus MPC 1 minus MPC multiplied by what? R. So this equation is known as what? ISKF, right? ISKF. And if you remember, we said we also had, if you recall again, we had a monetary policy as what R is equals to lambda. Sorry, R is equals to the autonomous R plus lambda inflation. Great, this is what we had for R. So great. So in this case, I can replace, let's say this is equation 2. So when I replace this into this, that will give me what? Monetary policy. So that is going to give me the AD demand curve, aggregate demand curve. So that's what I'm looking at, right? So what we are going to do now is let's try to simplify everything that we have here, right? Because the information has been given so that we can reduce it to a more friendly equation, right? So that means I can say y is equals to, what is my autonomous consumption? Autonomous consumption is 325. It's equals to 325 plus autonomous investment, which is 1.3, plus what is my government expenditure? 3.5. My government expenditure is 3.5. What is my net export? Minus 1. And what is my D? So my D is what? Minus 0.3. And then F is what? 1. Minus MPC, which is 0.75. And what is my T? My T is 3 all over 1 minus 0.75. So this is only for the first component, right? After that, I'll come to the second. So let's look at the first component. So I'm going to have 3.25 plus 1.3 plus 3.5 minus 1 minus 0.3 into brackets 1 minus 0.75 into bracket 3. right? That gives me 4.5. So 4.5, the whole expression gives me 4.5, and then the fraction part is what? 1 minus 0.75 is 0.25. So divide by 0.25, and that gives me 18. So I'll say y is equals to 18. Now let's look at the second component minus the second component. D is what? D is 0.3, and then X is 0.1 all over 1 minus MPC, that means 0.25 multiplied by R. Great. So that is, I will have 0.4 divided by 0.25, and that gives me 1.6. So that means I'm going to have this as y is equals to 18 minus 1.6 inflation. Is okay. So if you check, yeah, that's what you're going to have. And it's 18 inflation, which is this one here. Great. So now we know that the monetary policy also says what they said. Sorry, it's not inflation, it's 18R. Sorry, I'm sorry. It's R, yeah, it is R. Great. So this one is R. So now the next thing that we're going to do is, we know the monetary policy curve is R is equals to what? We had our autonomous R as 1 plus lambda, which is also 1, inflation. So lambda is 1, so multiply by have this. So I can replace this into this and have y is equals to 18 minus 1.6 into brackets 1 plus inflation, and that gives me y is equals to 18 minus 1.6, which is 16.4 minus 1.6 inflation. Great. So this is what we call the AD curve. Great. So we were asked to find the AD curve. So now the question is, assume AD. Now assume AD is equals to, now assume that P is equals to 1. What is the real interest rate? Okay, now, so let me clear this one. Okay. So we have the formula now. Great. Now they are saying that assume P equals to 1. What is going to be the real interest rate? Now, when P is equals to 1, P is the same as what? Inflation. When P equals to 1, then real interest rate is equals to autonomous power, which is 1, plus, it was already inflation, right? And you are saying that this is equals to 1, so it's going to be 1 plus 1, which is 2. So that means real interest rate is going to be 2. What? So what is going to be equilibrium level of output? So equilibrium level of output. So let me put bar on it just to indicate equilibrium output. It's also going to be 16.4 minus 1.6 into bracket. What is inflation? Inflation is 1. That's what we are saying. Assume P equals to 1. So that gives me 16.4 minus 1.6. It is going to give you 14.8. So the equilibrium output is 14.8. And the next one is consumption, equilibrium consumption. So if you recall from lecture 7, I think 7 or 8, we said consumption is also equals to what? The autonomous consumption part plus MPC into bracket Y minus T is okay. Now, what is the autonomous part of the consumption? It is 0.25. What is our MPC? Our MPC is equal to 0.75. And what is our Y? Our Y is equals to, Y is 14.8. And then what is our tax? Minus our disposable tax. Minus our tax, which is 3. And so we have 3.25 plus 0.75 into bracket 14.8 minus 3. That gives you 12.1. So that is, we have 12.1. Yeah, so we have 12.1. So what is the next one? So the next one that we are supposed to look for is plan investment. So the plan investment, what is the formula for plan investment 2? So what is the formula for plan investment? So investment formula is also I is equals to the autonomous part of the I minus, you have D plus F minus, D into bracket minus D into bracket R plus F minus D into bracket R plus F. So this is the autonomous part. So investment is equals to, what is the autonomous part? In the autonomous part was given as 1.3 minus, what is the D? 0.3. And what is the R? R is given as 2. We now know R as 2 plus, and then F is what? 1. So we have 1.3 minus 0.3 into brackets 2 plus 1. And that gives you 0.4. So that is $0.4. Great. Now the next one that you're supposed to look for is net export. Now the net export is also equals to net export of A minus X multiplied by R. And what is our net export? So in the question, the net export of autonomous parts is given as -1, right? And then minus X. So what is X? 0.1. And into bracket, what is our R? R is 2, right? R is 2. So that is going to give us -1 minus 0.1 into brackets 2. And that gives you -1.2. And that gives you -1.2. Yeah, that gives you -1.2. Great. So the next one is, suppose the Fed increases autonomous real interest rate to 2. How are these variables affected? So how are these variables affected? Suppose autonomous part is increased. So when the autonomous part is increased, the first impact will be on what? The monetary policy. So let's look at that first. So I will say my MP, monetary policy curve, R is equals to the R bar plus lambda inflation. Now, in the previous case, the autonomous part was what? 1, and it has increased to 2. So it's going to be 2 plus, and nothing happened to the lambda, which is 1. And then assuming the price is also 1, so that means it's going to give you 1. That means our real interest rate is equals to 3. Now we know that R is now equals to 3. So great. So let's go back. So all the information that we had, they are the same, right? So the only part that has changed is the R. So if you remember, we wrote our I curve as what? Y is equals to 18 minus 1.6 R. That's what we wrote, right? And then now we are saying that R is equals to what? 3. Because now, so we say Y is equals to 18 minus 1.6 into brackets 2 plus inflation, right? Now, and then we know that the inflation is always 1, so that means it's equals to 3 in this case, right? So we are going to have Y is equals to 18 minus 1.6 into bracket 3, which gives you 18 minus 1.6 into bracket 3, and that gives you 13.2. Now let's look at that again. Let's look at it again. Sorry. So we are going to have this. Yeah, so let's expand it and see. So you are supposed to have what? 13.2. Let's check again, see. Yeah. Okay. So even if we expand, we are going to have y is equals to 18 minus 1.6 times 2 is what? Minus 3.2. And minus 1.6 inflation. So this 18 minus 3.2, 18 minus 3.2, that gives you 14.8. You have it as equals to 14.8 is okay. Minus 1.6. Inflation is what? It's still 1 because nothing has happened to it. So inflation is still 1. Inflation is still 1, right? So that is here is 1. So that is 14.8 minus 1.6. And that gives you what? 13.2, the same thing. So you have it as 13.2. We have it as 13.2. So the next one is what? The next one, so we are going to look at the impact now on. So we know that the new y is what? The new y is now 13.2. And in the previous section, it was what? 14.8, right? Now because there's increase in what? Real interest rate, we have our output, the new output being reduced from what? 14.8 to 13.2. That means it still explains the graph. Great. Now we are going to also look at the impact on consumption. Great. So now let's go to consumption. Consumption. Now we said consumption is equals to the autonomous part of consumption plus MPC into brackets y minus t. Now the autonomous part hasn't changed. It is still our 3.25. Our MPC hasn't changed. It's 0.75. But our new output has changed. The output is now what? 13.2 minus our tax, which hasn't changed, which is 3. 3.25 plus 0.75 into bracket 13.2 minus 3. And that gives you 10.9. So that means autonomous consumption is what? Consumption now is 10.9. Great. So when you compare that to the previous one, too, consumption was, in the previous case, consumption was 12.1, and it has now reduced to what? 10.9. Great. Now the next one that we're looking at is what? Planned investment. So let's look at the investment. It's also the autonomous part of the investment minus D into brackets R plus F. Great. Now our D is now our autonomous part still remain the same. Nothing has changed. So it's 1.3 minus what is our D? Our D is 0.3. Now R has changed. R is no more 1 is what? No more 2. So R is now 3. So what did we get for our new R? So we had our R to be what? 3. So new R is now 3 plus 1. So that gives you 1.3 minus 0.3 into brackets 3 plus 1, which is, we have it as 0.1. So that means the new investment, in the previous case, we had investment was 0.4, and it has reduced to what? 0.1. Now the next question is the next one that we are looking at is net exports. So the net exports in this case is the autonomous part. The autonomous part hasn't changed. It is still -1 minus XR. Our X is what? 0.1. So sorry, let me write the formula so that people not get lost. So this what? Net export is the net exports A minus XR, right? And the autonomous part is -1 minus what is x is what 0.1, and then r is no more 2, r has increased to 3. So that gives us -1 minus 0.1 into bracket 3. So that will give you -1.3. That also gives you -1.3. Is okay. So great. So let's say great. Now let's look at the next question is so we have examined how these variables were all affected. Now the next, considering the effects of the aforementioned variables in C, why might the Fed decide to increase autonomous real interest rate? And like I said, the autonomous the real interest rate, the monetary policy curve is just used to stabilize inflation. So when the central bank thinks that the economy is going to expand, right, they will also decide to what, increase real interest rate just to, in order to stabilize inflation. Because once they are able to increase the real interest rate, just like it happened, it is going to reduce output, right? And once let's say that is our income, once the incomes come down, that means our spending will have to come down. So that means we are going to cut down our spending. That will reduce price. So they always try to what, use the autonomous real interest rate to stabilize inflation. Great. Yeah. So let's look at it here and see if it makes sense. So this is the old equilibriums and this is the new equilibriums, right? Just a summary or a recap. So when it comes to income, Y, it was 14.8. It has now come down to what, 13.2. Now we have our consumption, C, it was 12.1. It has now come down to what? 10.9. You have investment, which is 0.4. It's 0.4 and it has come down to 0.1. And our net export, which in the previous session we had -0.8, and it has reduced further to what? -1.3. So let's try and look at if let's try to analyze it and see if this thing makes sense. So what happened? It was real interest rate that increased, right? Now, when real interest rate increases, what happens to our investment? Investment has a negative relationship, right? So it falls, right? So great. So investment was 0.4. Now, because interest it has reduced, so it makes sense, right? Now, what happens if investment falls? What happens to our income? Because income is a composition of our consumption, investment, government spending, and less export. So that means income will also what? Fall. Now, did income fall? Yes, income was 14.8 and it has reduced to 13.32, right? Now, let's look at something. Now, when you check the consumption is also a function of what? Your autonomous part and then your disposable income. So once your consumption is your income is falling in this case, what it means is that consumption will also fall because consumption is this plus MPC into bracket. So this is MPC into bracket Y minus T, right? So once this one is falling, then it means consumption is also going to fall. So that is why consumption is also falling. So this also makes sense, right? Great. Great. So let's look at the next one. The next one is what? Net export. So we said net export too. So what happened? Real interest rate has increased. Sorry, real interest rate has increased. Now you see, if you are trying to analyze this from the net export perspective, you see, if you remember interest rate parity, we said our interest on foreign domestic commodity or domestic investment should be equal to that of the foreign investment, right? Now, once our that means I'm looking at domestic. That is when R increases, it means our R domestic is now greater than the R what foreign is okay. Now, once R domestic is greater than R foreign, that means investing in domestic in domestic countries what is more beneficial than investing in a foreign. right? So in that case, people are now going to demand more investment here, right? Now, once they are going to demand more investment, that means they will need more currency. They will need more of our currency in order to do investment in this country, right? Now, because of that, because the demand for this currency is going to increase, what happens to our exchange rate? It is going to appreciate, right? Because once our exchange rate is going to appreciate, that means it is going to go down. When it goes down, it means it has appreciated. Now, once it is appreciated, it means it becomes expensive to buy in the domestic country, right? Well, the city, their currency has now appreciated, right? So once it becomes more expensive for them to purchase good in this economy, what happens to the net export? Because that means the export will come down, so net export falls. So that is why the net export has even reduced, that was reduced to negative 0.8, and because of the increase in interest, it has now reduced to what, negative 1.3. So what it means now is whether you are using the curves or the algebra, you should be able to explain and come into what the same conclusion like I've done. So without the mathematics, you could have just used a curve to analyze how the impact has been. And when you are giving mathematics to, the conclusion that you are going to arrive at should be the same, right? Okay, so this brings us to the end of our discussion on monetary policy and aggregate demand curve. So in the next topic, I'm going to look at expectations. And thank you. But please do not forget to subscribe to my channel for me. Do not forget to subscribe. Thank you very much.